Hey guys, welcome to Mind Matters. This is Zenson.
This is Zoe.
This is Puri.
I'm Sienna.
And I'm Priya.
And throughout this podcast, we're going to be reflecting on our activities throughout the week and just be talking about how mental health connects with our disorder of the week, more specifically. And yeah, this week was a pretty good week for us. Like, coming off the heels of the previous break, we hung up posters around the school for more mental health awareness, which we are continuing to be approved for. No Monday Misconceptions episode this week, but we're definitely going to be doing one next week. And yeah, that's just how we roll, you know?
Yeah, like what Zenton said, we had around 4 posters approved by the vice principal, and we were allowed to hang them up around the school. And it was a collaboration with the HOSA PSA committee. So
Even though we weren't able to make one this week for Monday Misconceptions, I have one right here. So what do you guys think, true or false? People at a normal body weight cannot have an eating disorder.
I think false.
Definitely false.
So that's correct. It actually is false because there's an eating disorder called bulimia where people are malnourished and they don't eat enough, but they are a normal body weight.
Yeah, and that's like especially interesting because this week when I was doing the intro slides, I learned about like all these types of eating disorders and like how their range is like it's there's like a lot going on. So like
Yeah, I think they're all like kind of connected somehow because anorexia, where you're like underweight, can be stemmed from bulimia, where you're originally like a good weight, but it like gets worse and worse to the point of anorexia. Not saying like bulimia isn't bad, but like
yeah, of course, and like it makes it especially scary because like all of these like eating disorders can like lead to something else like bigger down the line. So
And a lot of side effects for eating disorders are like depression and low self-esteem, which also connects to the mental aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, a lot of eating disorders can lead to, like, really dangerous eating behaviors, which can, like, affect your mental health, and they're really, like, self-destructive in nature.
no, and especially like that is like so normalized in our media. Like we see like so many celebrities are like constantly compared to each other on the media, and it's just like it's overall unhealthy because people don't realize like how much of a profound effect you could have on these people's mental health specifically.
yeah, I think that after people see on social media how everyone has these unrealistic standards for people, they start believing that they have to be like them, and it's really hard, and it could lead to the development of several eating disorders.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the reason why it's so prevalent in, like, teens today, because a lot of them are, like, going on social media and seeing all of these, like, I guess, like, norms and, like, on, like, how they should look, what their body weight should be, and I guess it really, like, affects their, like, mentally.
And I think that it's not only like celebrities and influencers online, it's like even our peers and people in our school, we see that like they're editing their photos and stuff to try and fit the beauty standards, and it's really difficult to like keep up with that because I feel like they're always changing and it's like almost impossible to keep up with them and especially fit them because people are going through these like extreme processes to try and like change their bodies to fit it when it really doesn't matter. And I think also like in school we're doing units on like equality and stuff, and they talk about beauty standards and stuff and how people are changing themselves to like fit in with everything. And in English we're doing like a dystopian unit, sorry, not novel, and we're always seeing these people try and fit in and like raise their status and like fit in with the social norms, and we see ones where it's beauty standards and everyone has to fit this certain beauty standard and they can't be different or else they're not accepted. And I feel like that's what scares so many people into eating disorders.
Yeah, and I saw this statistic that said like over 1 in 5 kids like from the ages 13 to 18 either currently or at some point will have a serious mental illness, and that just shows that it's like way more common than like people often think.
I think it's very prevalent in like girls especially because they're always worrying about like their body image a lot, and they're always, on like social media comparing themselves to other girls.
And I feel like that could have such a negative consequence mentally on males because also there are also people who are affected by eating disorders, because females aren't the only ones who are affected by it. But there's this perception by the public that it's like only females that can be affected by eating disorders, and that's not true. And if a boy is struggling with that, they feel like they can't talk about it, or they have to keep it to themselves, and that could hurt them mentally.
No, absolutely. And we even see this in the media. Like, our celebrity this week was Zayn Malik, and I personally did not know that he had an eating disorder when someone brought it up, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And it's like unfortunate how the media doesn't put light on men who have eating disorders, because it is a very real issue.
And a lot of people with eating disorders usually have a very low self-esteem for themselves.
And I think that it doesn't only affect their confidence and take away from that, it also sometimes can take away from their relationships with their family, because people who suffer from an eating disorder or mental disorder of any kind can feel like a burden to their family and make it really difficult for them to talk about, no matter what kind of eating disorder it is.
Yeah, and I also think it's just a continuous spiral, because people that need help aren't receiving the help they need, and that just continuing the cycle of getting worse and worse of these side effects.
And there are so many people around us that help, but sometimes just because you feel like a burden, you reach out to those people when you should. But I feel like it's important that everyone realizes all the resources around them to help them.
Yeah, I feel like it's both ways. The people who are suffering with the eating disorder, they should feel safe and comfortable with reaching out for help, and also people who want everyone around them should create the support system for people who are suffering to make them feel safe and better about themselves.
Absolutely, and this is one of our incentives of making the account in the first place. It's bringing awareness to mental health. It's normalizing discussing mental health, and it's just making mental health bigger than what people think it is.
I agree. By informing people of eating disorders, it increases our empathy for them. We're able to put ourselves in their shoes and understand what they're struggling with, and ultimately trying to prevent eating disorders. And
You're talking about eating disorders in general terms, but there are so many more specific branches.
Oh yeah, so I know that a lot of us here are taking psychology, and we actually covered some eating disorders. So some of the ones I remember are anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. So I guess we can start off by summarizing anorexia. It's how I remember it. It's an eating disorder where people limit their food intake because they have a fear of gaining weight, and that results in them being under the average weight by a significant amount, and it's just really unhealthy for them.
I actually have a very interesting fact about this. It's that up to 50% of individuals with anorexia nervosa also struggle with anxiety disorders, such as panic disorder or social anxiety disorder.
And yeah, that just it really shows how dangerous these disorders can be, because once you have one of them, it can lead to all these other things relating to mental health that no one talks about. So yes.
And even though we're on the topic of mental health, I feel it's so dangerous, because a lot of people don't consider mental health as part of human health sometimes, but it really is, because it can affect you deeper than that. For example, when we were learning about eating disorder, we read about someone who had experience with anorexia, and we learned that they had issues not only mentally, but a result of the anorexia was having a stomach issue. I forgot the name of it, but it was because they were throwing up their food so much, they became really sick because of that. And it also leads to other issues hormone issues. It's not only in your brain.
Yeah, mental health is also connected to your physical health and your emotional health, so that's why it's so important to keep all three healthy, and just keeping one healthy has such a big impact on all the rest. So if you have good mental health, then it would help benefit your emotional health and also your physical health as well.
And yeah, going off of what Sienna said, when I was making my poster from last week, I defined mental health, and the CDC describes it as our emotional, psychological, and social well-being, and that just shows you how important it is. Even though it isn't a physical body part, it's just it pertains to everything in the body. And yeah, so Zoe, do you want to talk about the next one?
Yeah, so the next one would be bulimia, and bulimia is an eating disorder where people tend to binge eat and then they just throw it all up because similarly to anorexia, they have a fear of gaining weight. And the main difference between the two disorders are that people with anorexia are severely underweight, but people with bulimia are an average weight. And bulimia is actually one of the beginning parts or potential beginning parts of anorexia because it could lead to it if it develops and gets worse.
Yeah, I actually think bulimia is one of the scariest eating disorders because a lot of the people use compensatory behaviors such as avoiding to gain weight, vomiting, restricting what they eat, heavy exercise, laxatives, and even taking diet pills.
Yeah, I just feel people with bulimia and anorexia are just extremely malnourished, and it's scary for them and the people around them because it's you see that physical change, and it's hard to because I'm sure they're very aware of it, but due to the mental disorder they can't do anything about it, and that's probably really frustrating and scary for them.
Yeah, and this even extends to our healthcare industry because, as Zoe said, there's the main difference between anorexia and bulimia is that people who suffer from bulimia stay at an average weight, while people with anorexia are are at a lower weight. And it just shows that in healthcare, even though the number may be at quote unquote average, it really isn't, and it takes a professional doctor to know that, which is why going into the healthcare industry is so important, especially dealing with this on a daily basis.
And that reminds me of what Priya said, how it's the most scary one, because bulimia, it's since they're that average weight, people view them as they're fine, there's nothing wrong with them, as opposed to anorexia when you see that dramatic decrease in their weight. But for bulimia, it's people may not know what's going on because it don't look like something is wrong, but deep down something is wrong.
This psychological struggle that Zoe described also connects to other mental disorders such as depression and bipolar, because people could be going through these things without outsiders knowing what's happening deep down.
Yeah, and the last disorder was binge eating disorder, right?
Yeah, so binge eating disorder is a disorder categorized by consuming unusually large amounts of food and almost feeling unable to control and stop how much you're eating. And overall, this kind of falls under, all of these eating disorders kind of fall under the same umbrella together, although they're all different in their own ways. They all relate to the same type of symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely, Priya. But it's just it's interesting to see how, what different forms these disorders take, because we go from anorexia, which is eating very little, to what you just said, binge eating disorder, which is eating a lot more. So it's important that we understand that eating disorder affects all branches of food habits. It's not just a specific type.
And they affect not just the food habits, but they also affect everyone. It's a common misconception that binge eating and all these other eating disorders affect only a certain group of people, but we need to remember that eating disorders affect everyone.
And I think that we see online a lot of teenagers are speaking out about their experiences with eating disorders, no matter what type it might be. And I just feel we may think it's a lot, people are spreading so much awareness, and I do think it is increasing. However, there's still so many people who probably aren't speaking out about it, who don't want to talk about it or admit to it because they are embarrassed or ashamed of it, when really there's nothing to be ashamed about.
because it's not something they chose to do. And so that's why I think it's just really important to spread awareness on it, because you don't know who's suffering from an eating disorder, and you don't know how it's affecting them, because not everyone's speaking out about it. And I feel like most people who suffer from one are not speaking out about it on social media or like to just people in their life.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, as a mental health community, we should know how to know and understand these eating disorders, but also like how to prevent eating disorders, such as like being aware of the various eating disorders to help diagnose if one of your friends or somebody you know is suffering from this, and helping them seek help immediately.
Another way to prevent them is to encourage a healthy body image for yourself and others. This can be done through positive affirmations you tell yourself.
It's also important to avoid categorizing foods. So people usually categorize foods as good or safe versus bad and dangerous. So it's important to keep like a variety and not specifically pick foods based off of your perception on what's good and bad, and just eat what makes you happy.
Absolutely, and that's why like it makes it like so important to seek professional help when you actually need it. Like people suffer from eating disorders every day, but some people are just too afraid to reach out, or like think that like it will affect their image in some way, and like people have to realize that they should put that all aside and focus on your well-being above all.
Yeah, any awareness in general would help everyone, and don't be afraid to spread awareness, because there's always someone who's suffering. And if you see a post, and if you're someone who's suffering and you see a post that like spreads awareness, it could possibly help them overcome their own eating disorder.
Yep, and that's why PHS Mental Health is always here for you guys. PHS Mental Health signing out now. Say bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.